The sheriff's patrol boat pulled up fast beside mine. Flashing red and blue lights reflected on the still lake water, cutting through the calm like a blade. 2 officers jumped off, their boots thudding against the wooden planks of my lake cabin's dock. "Sir, step off the boat and show us your ID," one of them barked, already gripping his holster. I blinked, still holding my coffee mug. "Is something wrong, officer?" "You are trespassing on HOA-controlled water," the younger deputy snapped, motioning toward the marina across the lake, where a crowd had started gathering on the pier. Many of them in robes and pajamas, HOA board members with clipboards and sour faces. Within 8 minutes of anchoring my old wooden boat beside my private lake cabin, I had a sheriff, a deputy, and a furious HOA president on the line yelling something about bylaws and violations. I calmly handed them my ID. "You might want to call your supervisor," I said, "and maybe your realtor. Because as of 8 minutes ago, I bought that marina." The officers froze. The HOA president, a sharp-jawed woman with thick glasses named Deborah, who was already marching down the dock toward me, stopped mid-step. The clipboard in her hand clattered to the ground. "You what?" "Bought it," I said again. "Cash. Closed this morning. You'll be hearing from my lawyer." The lake went quiet. No birds, no waves, just stunned silence. And that's when I took a sip of my coffee, leaned back in my boat chair, and smiled. But let me tell you how we even got here in the first place. 3 weeks earlier, I was sitting in my old recliner, thumbing through a dusty photo album of my late wife, Margaret. We used to come to this lake every summer when we were younger. We'd rent out the tiny red cabin tucked into the tree line on the far side, hidden from the loud families and HOA noise. Back then, it wasn't managed by anyone. Just peace and water. But a lot had changed since then. Developers had moved in. Mansions with glass walls popped up along the shore like mushrooms after rain. The HOA soon followed, turning the lake into their personal kingdom. Now, even sneezing too loud could get you a warning letter in the mail. But that little red cabin? It had been sitting there, untouched, falling apart, forgotten. Until 2 months ago, when I found out it was for sale. I made one call. "I'll take it," I told the agent. "No bargaining. Just tell the owner I'll take care of it." That place held too many memories. It was where I first told Margaret I loved her. Where we once watched a meteor shower wrapped in the same old blanket. I didn't just want the cabin. I needed it. So I bought it. Restored it myself. New windows, reinforced the dock, fixed the old lanterns that lined the porch. Even kept Margaret's favorite wind chimes by the door. But apparently, my return stirred a hornet's nest I didn't know existed. The moment I floated my old wooden boat into the lake and docked at my cabin last week, I saw binoculars flashing from across the water. Then came the visit. It was a Tuesday morning. I had just returned from buying firewood when a group of 4 people stood in my driveway. 3 men and 1 woman. The woman, Deborah, introduced herself as the HOA president. The others were the so-called enforcement committee. They didn't greet me. "Sir, you're not allowed to dock a vessel on this lake without HOA approval," she said. I blinked. "I'm sorry, what now?" "This is a privately maintained lake under HOA control," she continued. "You need approval to use a boat, fish, or even occupy a cabin that connects to the lake. You are not registered." I looked at them, trying not to laugh. "Ma'am, I bought this cabin outright. The dock comes with it." "That doesn't exempt you from the rules," one of the men said. "Especially if you're not a registered HOA member." I pointed toward the mailbox. "This cabin isn't in your HOA zone. I checked the map myself. My property isn't even in your neighborhood." They didn't like that answer. Deborah narrowed her eyes. "We'll see about that." I thought that was the end of it. Maybe a few letters or arguments. But no. The next morning, I found a violation notice taped to my front door. Unauthorized boat usage. Disturbance to wildlife. Unauthorized occupancy of structure. Then came the threats. One evening, I was enjoying grilled corn and whiskey on the dock when I heard a drone buzzing above me. It hovered there for 5 minutes before retreating. Later that night, someone left tire tracks through my gravel driveway and knocked over my trash cans. I knew they wanted me gone, but I wasn't going anywhere. This lake meant something to me. It meant Margaret. And no HOA was going to bully me into leaving. So, I made some calls. First to the county assessor's office. Then to the state land records division. Turns out, while the HOA managed most of the homes around the lake, the actual marina, the only one with boat slips, a fueling station, and the deeded access to enforce lake rights, was privately owned by a retiring businessman named Gus Miller. I met Gus for lunch 2 days later. "Funny thing," he said between bites of catfish. "They tried to buy me out last year. Wanted to add security gates and high-end features. Tried to lowball me. I leaned in. What did you say?" "I told them to take a hike," Gus chuckled. I smiled. "What if I offered you a fair deal?" We shook on it that evening. Gus even gave me the keys ahead of closing. "You look like the kind of guy who'll actually appreciate it," he said. And that's how, 8 minutes after the HOA called the cops on me for floating up to my own cabin, I owned the very marina they used to enforce their rules. But back to that moment. As I sipped my coffee and the officers looked at each other, unsure what to do next, Deborah's radio crackled to life. "Deb, it's Todd from the board. I just confirmed it. He really did buy the marina." Deborah's jaw clenched so tight, I thought it might snap. I turned to the deputy. "Now, unless I've done something actually illegal, I'd like to finish my coffee in peace." The older sheriff nodded slowly. "You're not breaking any laws, sir. We'll be on our way." But Deborah wasn't done. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "This isn't over." I didn't say a word. I just smiled. But that wasn't the end of the trouble. Not by a long shot. Deborah stormed off the dock like a tornado in heels, yelling into her walkie-talkie the whole way. I could hear bits and pieces. Emergency board meeting, legal action, unacceptable behavior. The two officers gave me a respectful nod and motored away. I sat there, finishing my coffee, letting the lake breeze cool my face. But inside, I knew this was just the beginning. The very next morning, I woke up to find a bright orange, "Do not enter, pending investigation," sign nailed to the dock post. A letter from the HOA was duct-taped right beside it, claiming the structure was unsafe, and that all marine access is suspended pending inspection. They didn't waste time. But here's the kicker. They had no jurisdiction over my dock. None. Zero. Still, they were trying to scare me. They didn't understand who they were messing with. You see, I may be 72 years old with silver hair and knees that groan when I get out of bed, but I didn't spend 4 decades building one of the most successful construction and real estate companies in the state just to be bullied in my retirement. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let a group of clipboard warriors tell me I couldn't enjoy the lake cabin my wife and I had dreamed of retiring in together. That same day, I called my lawyer, Harvey. A tough old dog. Been with me since the early days. "Oh boy," he whistled after I forwarded him the photos. "They don't even have legal access to issue citations outside their jurisdiction. Want me to send a cease and desist?" "Not yet," I said, rubbing my temple. "Let them hang themselves a little more." That evening, I took my boat out again. I floated right past the marina. Everyone was watching, dozens of them on the pier, some with phones filming me like I was an escaped zoo animal. I smiled and waved. I even honked the little brass boat horn. The lake had never felt so dramatic. That night, I cooked dinner, grilled tilapia, boiled potatoes, and collard greens. Margaret would have loved it. As I sat down to eat, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "Mr. Carter?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's speaking?" "This is Tina Monroe. I'm a reporter with Channel 12 News. We've been receiving calls about an alleged incident between a local HOA and a property owner. Some say police were called over a boat. Of course, it was only a matter of time before the circus got a media tent." "I'd prefer not to comment just yet, Miss Monroe," I said. "But when the time comes, I'll give you a call myself." "Fair enough," she said politely. "Please keep my number." I hung up, heart pounding a bit. This was getting bigger than I expected. The next morning, things seemed quiet. Birds chirped. The lake mist rose gently over the water. I brewed my coffee and walked out onto the dock. Until I heard bang, bang, bang. 3 knocks on the front door. I opened it to find 2 men in hard hats and yellow vests. "Good morning, sir," one said cheerfully. "We've been contracted by the Lakeview Shores HOA to conduct a safety inspection of this structure. We need to assess your dock and the side retaining walls. Could take a couple hours." I crossed my arms. "Do you have a warrant?" They looked at each other. "No, but..." "Are you licensed state inspectors?" "No, we're subcontractors hired through." "Then you're trespassing," I said flatly. "Turn around." "Now." The older one narrowed his eyes. "We were just doing our job. Your job just changed. It now includes leaving this property before I call the sheriff myself." They backed off, grumbling, and drove off in a dusty pickup. Later that afternoon, I got another letter, this one delivered in person by Deborah herself. It was neatly folded in a white envelope. "We're revoking your water access," she said with a proud smirk. "Effective immediately." I looked her in the eye. "Deborah, you can't revoke something you don't own." "You're wrong," she hissed. "We'll see what the court says." I didn't reply, but I was already preparing something they didn't expect. I made a few calls that evening, to an architect friend, a local landscaper, and my old boat dock engineer Leo. I asked them to meet me at the cabin the following week. I had a plan, and it involved making sure this marina wasn't just mine on paper. It would feel like mine too. They wanted to play HOA games. I was about to build the best private lakefront experience the county had ever seen. 5 days later, trucks started rolling in. First came the new floating deck sections. Then the solar-powered dock lights. A custom boathouse with storage and an office space. A floating fire pit for lake parties. Even a mini cafe boat I was converting from an old barge. Word spread like wildfire. HOA members lined the edge of the lake daily, whispering, staring, sending drones again. Some were angry. Some were curious. And a few even waved. Probably realizing I wasn't the enemy they'd been told I was. On the 6th day, I was on the dock, checking the anchoring brackets, when a woman approached from the other side of the marina. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with kind eyes and salt and pepper curls. "Mr. Carter?" she said softly. "Yes. My name's June. I live over in Lot 12C. I just wanted to say I'm sorry about how the HOA's been treating you. They don't speak for all of us." That caught me off guard. "Well, thank you, June. That means a lot." She handed me a pie. Apple by the smell of it. Still warm. "I heard you're restoring the old boathouse. My husband passed last year, and it's been lonely out here. If you ever need help baking or just want company, I'd be happy to come by." I smiled. "You're welcome here anytime." That was the first crack in their wall. A neighbor reaching out with kindness. But of course, it didn't last. Because 2 days later, I woke up to find the most extreme retaliation yet. My dock had been vandalized. Paint buckets dumped across the walkway. One of my boat's seats slashed open, and scrawled across the side of the boathouse in red spray paint, for words that lit a fire in my chest. "Get off our lake." I stared at the message for a long time. Fury, disappointment, sadness. It all swirled in me like a storm. But more than anything, I felt one thing. Resolved. They wanted a war. Now they had won. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. This story's just heating up, and I want to know who's still with me. The paint had dried overnight, and the red spray-painted words, "Get off our lake," looked even bolder in the morning sun. I stood on the dock with a scrub brush in one hand, but I wasn't really looking at the vandalism. I was staring across the lake, at the marina, at the dozens of neat, expensive homes, and at the HOA board that had turned my peaceful return into a battleground. I wasn't afraid. I was motivated. Instead of cleaning the graffiti, I left it right there on the boathouse wall as a reminder, both for me and for them, that they'd fired the first real shot. Then I called Harvey. "It's time," I said. "I want to move forward with the injunction and press vandalism charges." Harvey didn't hesitate. "Already ahead of you, Carter. I got video footage from your security cam sent over this morning. Got one of their HOA enforcement guys, name's Mike something, on camera holding a paint bucket at 3:42 a.m. Let's make it public," I said. "Let them see what their leadership really looks like." That afternoon, Harvey filed the injunction in county court. We submitted the security footage, documented damages, and requested a formal restraining order against the HOA's leadership team from accessing or interfering with my private property. And that was only the legal side. The same day, I reached out to a former marketing partner of mine, Rebecca, who now ran a social media strategy firm, and asked her to help me build a clean little website for the People's Lake. I wanted the truth out there. About how this HOA was acting like a mafia. About how they thought they could bully anyone who didn't bow down to them. The site went live in 48 hours. It included everything. Photos of the vandalism, drone footage of HOA officials trespassing, audio clips from angry voicemail messages they'd left me. We even posted a timeline of events, including the day I bought the marina. But the best part, we launched a petition titled, "End HOA Overreach in Lakeview Shores." It gained 2,000 signatures in the first 72 hours. And the real fun started when Channel 12 News finally aired the story. I was sipping hot chocolate by the fireplace when the segment aired. The anchor introduced it as a peaceful lakeside retirement turns into a battle over rights, respect, and the surprising twist involving a marina purchase that shocked a whole community. They showed my dock, the vandalism, my interview clip, and even Deborah being confronted on camera after a board meeting. Reporter: "Did the HOA authorize a physical inspection on private property without the owner's consent?" Deborah, visibly rattled: We acted in good faith. We believed the structure was unsafe." Reporter: "And what about the vandalism? A member of your enforcement committee has been identified in security footage." Deborah: "No comment." That clip went viral. I got calls from neighbors, strangers, local business owners, all supporting me. People who had been bullied into silence were finally speaking up. But of course, the HOA didn't fold. They hit back harder. A week later, I received a formal notice of community review hearing. They claimed I was causing disorder within the community, harboring commercial activity without approval, and creating a nuisance through unauthorized construction. It was laughable. My construction? On my private property. My dock wasn't even visible from half their houses. But they weren't trying to win legally. They were trying to wear me down. They wanted to bury me in paperwork, fines, meetings, and threats. I didn't go to the hearing. Harvey went on my behalf, and left after 30 minutes with a grin. "They tried to fine you $25,000, he said. Then got mad when I asked who was going to enforce it, since they don't own the lake or your property. I also served them a counternotice for abuse of process. I chuckled. Did they mention the marina? They're pretending like it never happened, Harvey smirked. But I knew what was coming next. They were going to try something big. Something desperate. So I got ready. Phase 2 of my plan involved opening up the marina to the public. Not for commercial profit. I wasn't interested in running a business again at 72. But for community. The real kind. We hosted a community cleanup day and invited volunteers from the county to help clean the shoreline, remove old junk, repaint docks, and plant flowers. I hired a live band and served hot dogs from my floating cafe boat. Over 150 people showed up. Families, couples, teenagers, grandparents. Some of them from inside the HOA zone, others from the neighboring town. A little girl named Ellie asked if she could fish from the dock. Of course, I said. This lake's meant to be enjoyed. Her parents smiled and whispered, thank you. Nobody's been that kind in this community for years. That night, I lit up the marina with solar-powered lanterns and hosted a movie night on the water, projecting Finding Nemo onto a white sailcloth while people floated in inflatable tubes and rowboats. It was magical, but it made Deborah furious. The very next morning, I woke up to an envelope shoved under my cabin door. This one had no letterhead, no signature, just one typed sentence. We warned you. 3 hours later, a loud engine rumbled down my gravel road. I stepped outside to see a flatbed truck carrying a load of concrete blocks, and behind it, a large crane. My gut dropped. Then came the pickup truck. HOA enforcement. 3 men hopped out, including the paint vandal from before, Mike. What the hell is this? I asked, already grabbing my phone to record. Per emergency order, Mike said with a smug look. We're building a retention barrier across your dock line. You're violating water regulation zoning. This is illegal trespassing, I snapped. But they ignored me. They started lowering concrete blocks into the water, one by one, trying to build a barrier directly in front of my dock. I called Harvey in a panic. They're trying to block my water access. Keep recording, he said calmly. I'm calling the sheriff. Minutes later, blue and red lights lit up the trees again. But this time, they were for them. The sheriff stepped out and stormed up to Mike. Who gave you authorization to pour concrete in a waterway? Mike stammered. We were following HOA water zoning procedures. This isn't an HOA-owned lake, the sheriff barked. This marina and shoreline are under private title. Do you have permits? No answer. Cease all activity immediately. Step away from the machinery. Mike was escorted to the back of the patrol car. The others scattered like rats when the lights came on. I stood there, camera still rolling, heart pounding. That night, I uploaded the footage to the People's Lake website and social media. HOA tries to block my dock. Sheriff shuts them down. Over 100,000 views in 2 days. And I didn't stop there. The next morning, I filed official environmental damage claims against the HOA. Turns out, dropping concrete into a freshwater lake without permits is a serious offense. EPA level serious. They had crossed the line. For a brief moment, peace returned. Neighbors I had never met before showed up with casseroles, lawn chairs, and thank you notes. One man, a former HOA member, knocked on my door and said, I resigned yesterday. I didn't sign up for this madness. They've turned our community into a war zone. I invited him in for coffee. We talked for hours. He told me something that chilled me. They have a private chat thread. The board members. They've been plotting ways to frame you, drive you out. Even tried to bribe the former marina owner to revoke the sale. Gus? I asked. He nodded. But he said no. Good old Gus. May not have been rich, but he had a spine. Then came the final straw. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the lake in gold, I heard rustling behind the cabin. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward the woods. What I saw made me stop cold. A man, maybe mid-30s, wearing all black, was crouched beside my propane tank, holding what looked like a wrench or metal rod. Hey! I yelled. He bolted. I chased him halfway to the road before he disappeared into the tree line. The next morning, I found the gas line loosened. Not enough to cause a leak, but enough to scare me. They weren't just playing HOA games anymore. Someone had tried to sabotage my cabin. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't about property rights anymore. It was about principle. They wanted to scare me. But they had no idea. I was just getting started. 3 days after the propane sabotage, the county sheriff's department launched an official investigation into the incident. A deputy named Marshall, a young guy with a strong handshake and sharp eyes, stopped by the cabin. You're lucky you caught him, he said, inspecting the loosened valve. Most folks wouldn't have noticed until it was too late. I gave a humorless chuckle. I've built hospitals and luxury towers. You think a crooked HOA can scare me off with a gas leak? He didn't smile. This ain't just HOA games anymore, Mr. Carter. Whoever did this wanted to hurt you. This is criminal. I already knew that, but hearing it aloud made it sink deeper. My quiet retirement dream had turned into a full-blown battle zone, and the only weapon I had left, besides legal action, was the truth. So I doubled down. That week, I hosted another event at the Marina. This time, it was called Reclaim the Lake Day. It was part protest, part community gathering. We printed shirts that read, "I float where I want," and gave out stickers saying "Boats over bullies." Over 300 people came. News vans lined the outer road. Local bands played, kids swam in designated areas, and I even gave a short speech from the dock. This lake isn't just water and property lines. It's memories. It's freedom. It's home. And no board or bully is going to take that away from us. The crowd cheered. But not everyone was cheering. From across the water, Deborah stood on the HOA pier, arms crossed, lips pursed like she'd sucked a lemon. A few board members stood beside her, visibly uncomfortable. Then mid-speech, I saw her lift her phone and dial. I didn't know what was coming, but I had a feeling she wasn't ordering pizza. An hour later, the party was in full swing when a sleek black SUV pulled into the Marina's outer lot. A man stepped out wearing a blue blazer, tan slacks, and that unmistakable air of smug entitlement. I recognized him immediately, Gregory Parkman, the HOA's lawyer. Former corporate defense. The kind of man who smiled with his teeth, but never his eyes. He marched up the dock with 2 folders in hand and handed one to me. "What's this?" I asked, flipping it open. "A cease and desist," he said coolly. "For unauthorized public gatherings, misuse of residential zoning, and defamation of the Lakeview Shores HOA." I blinked. Defamation. "You referred to several members as a mafia and clipboard cult in your online blog post," he replied, completely serious. I looked around at the families laughing, at the floating grill boat serving hot dogs, at the paddleboards lined along the shore. "Do you think this looks like a cult rally to you?" I asked him. He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me the second folder. "This is a motion for a temporary restraining order. If approved, you'll be legally barred from holding any Marina events until a formal hearing." "You know this won't stand," I said. He smirked. "We're counting on it being enough to slow you down." Then he turned and walked away, like a man who thought he just won something. But that smirk, I'd seen that before. Years ago, from a banker who thought I wouldn't notice he'd buried a penalty clause in a lease deal. And back then, just like now, I had one rule. Never let the smirk win. That night, I went back to my cabin and sat at the kitchen table for hours, just thinking. I missed Margaret more than ever. She would have handled all of this with grace and patience. She used to calm me when I got worked up, placing her hand on mine and saying, "Remember, kindness is your strength, not your weakness." But I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. People were showing up, speaking out, sending letters of support. Single moms, veterans, retirees, people who were sick of HOA threats and wanted peace. I couldn't stop now. The next morning, I called Harvey. "Let's file a counter motion. And I want to go public again." He groaned. "You're really making me earn my paycheck this month, Carter." "You love it," I replied. He did. By noon, we'd sent out press releases, and within 48 hours, Channel 12 was back at my Marina, this time doing a live interview on site. Standing beside the freshly restored dock, I addressed the camera. "I bought this Marina fair and square. I've followed every law. The HOA doesn't get to harass or threaten people just because they think they own the lake. This isn't about property anymore. It's about community. And we're taking ours back." The story aired that night. I went to bed feeling lighter. But peace never lasted long out here. 2 nights later, just past 3 a.m., I heard a strange sound outside my cabin. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I heard splashing. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside onto the porch, sweeping the beam across the lake. And there they were. 3 men. In a boat. Wearing hoodies. No lights. One of them was climbing up onto the floating dock. They didn't see me yet. I stayed quiet, slowly backing into the cabin, reaching for the phone. But before I could call the sheriff, I heard a crack. A wooden post on the dock split under pressure. Then came a loud splash. Someone had fallen into the water. *T. I heard one of them yell. I flipped on the dock lights. Bright LED beams lit up the entire area. The men froze. Now I could see them clearly. One of them, yes, Mike again, was dripping wet, clinging to the edge of the dock. Another stumbled backward into the boat, trying to start the engine. "Too late," I muttered, and hit speed dial. By the time the sheriff arrived, again, 2 of the men had escaped. But Mike wasn't so lucky. Soaked and shivering, he was caught trying to pull the ignition off one of the floating cafe boats. Sabotage. Again, I told the deputy. And I want full charges this time. The next day, I sent an email blast to all 2,000 petition signers. I attached a photo of Mike being led away in cuffs, along with the subject line. "They're still trying to sink us, but we're still floating. Support doubled overnight. That same weekend, 18 new families signed up for private dock slips under my management. And for the first time since this all began, I noticed something peculiar across the lake. For sale signs. At least 4 of them. I heard whispers that several HOA members were quietly pulling out. Deborah's grip was slipping. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Because 2 days later, the court date arrived. In the county courthouse, Harvey stood tall beside me as we faced off against the full HOA legal team. Deborah was there. So was Gregory. And they came ready to fight. They tried every trick in the book. Argued that my community events were public disturbances. Claimed the Marina zoning was invalid. Brought in fake witnesses to say my cafe boat was serving alcohol without a license. A lie. We only served soda and juice. But Harvey dismantled every argument. He brought documentation. Video evidence. Witnesses of our own. Even June, my sweet neighbor, testified. I used to be afraid to say anything, she told the judge, voice trembling. But Mr. Carter made this place feel like home again. When she sat back down, she grabbed my hand and squeezed it. The judge, an older gentleman with tired eyes and a thick mustache, took a long pause after closing arguments. Then he cleared his throat. I've reviewed the evidence, he said. And it's clear that the HOA has overstepped its authority multiple times. The marina, and the cabin in question, fall outside their governance boundaries. He looked directly at Deborah. Any further interference will be considered harassment and may lead to personal liability. Boom. Mic drop. When we left the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered on the steps. They clapped as we walked out. One kid held up a sign that read, "Float on, Mr. Carter." I laughed. Harvey clapped me on the back. You just beat them at their own game. But I wasn't smiling for long. Because as we pulled into the marina later that evening, I noticed something strange. The gate to the main utility shed, where the power controls for the dock were stored, was open. I parked the truck, ran over, and opened the door. Inside, every wire had been ripped out. The entire marina's lighting system destroyed. This wasn't petty anymore. This was war. And I was going to win it. I stood in the doorway of the utility shed, my boots crunching on shattered fuses and torn wires. The stench of burnt rubber hung in the air like a warning. Every power conduit that fed the marina lights, docks, and security cameras had been yanked out, sliced, torn, and left in a tangle of destruction. This wasn't vandalism. This was sabotage. A slow fury started to burn in my chest, deep and quiet. The kind of anger that didn't make you yell or curse, but made you start writing names. I didn't shout. I didn't call anyone right away. I just pulled out my phone, took photos from every angle, then drove straight to the sheriff's station myself. Sheriff Nolan was already waiting when I arrived. He had that look on his face, half exhausted, half curious. "Carter," he sighed, rubbing his temple, "I was hoping not to see you again this week." "You'll want to see this," I said, placing my phone on the table and sliding it across to him. He flipped through the photos, his eyebrows rising with every swipe. "That's the main panel? Every cable cut. Every breaker busted." He leaned back in his chair. "You think it's the HOA again?" "I know it," I said. "But it's not just HOA politics anymore, Sheriff. This is malicious destruction of property, on private land." He nodded slowly. "We'll open a formal investigation. If you've got security footage." "They cut the power. No cameras." "Damn," he muttered. Then he looked up. "But they made a mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "Your marina is insured, right?" "Of course." "Then let's make this very public. Press charges. Release photos to the news. Let the insurance company know. Let the county know. They want to play dirty. We'll give them a cleanup they can't sweep under the rug." That night, I sat on the dock with a lantern at my side and an old spiral notebook in my lap. I opened to a fresh page and wrote across the top, "They want me gone." Then I started listing everything they'd done. Called cops over a peaceful boat arrival. Issued fake citations. Tried to block my dock with concrete. Sabotaged propane tank. Destroyed marina utility room. And right below that I wrote, "But I'm still here." The wind blew gently across the lake. The moon cast a silver trail on the dark water. I missed Margaret's voice, her gentle wisdom. She would have told me not to retaliate with bitterness, but to stand taller, smile wider, and respond with dignity. So that's what I did. The next morning, I went back to work. Rebuilt the wiring. Ordered new breakers and lights. Hired an electrician crew and told them to double everything. Twice the lights, backup power sources, motion sensors, and hidden security cameras with local recording. "Make this place Fort Knox," I told the foreman. "They want to fight in the dark. I'll flood the lake with light." Then, I posted another update to the People's Lake website. This time, the title read, "They cut the lights, but we're still shining." Attached were photos of the damage and a copy of the sheriff's incident report. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. Everyone knew who was behind it. Within 24 hours, News stations picked it up. A local reporter from Lake County Chronicle called me. "Do you think the HOA leadership is behind this latest attack?" I answered clearly. "I don't think. I know. But I'm not focused on revenge. I'm focused on rebuilding." Meanwhile, Deborah and the HOA board started to feel the pressure. Their lawyer, Gregory, hadn't been seen in public in days. Several board members quietly resigned. Their Facebook group turned into a battlefield of angry homeowners demanding transparency. And then it happened. A leak. One of their former board members, an older gentleman named Curtis who used to attend meetings but had stayed quiet, sent me a manila envelope. No return address. Inside was a printed stack of emails. Internal HOA messages. Conversations between board members about pushing Carter out, making the Marina miserable, finding ways to revoke his property rights. There were even notes about a private incident team organized to patrol near my property. They called it Operation Shoreline. It was laughable and terrifying all at once. But most importantly, it was evidence. I forwarded it to Harvey, who whistled through the phone. "This is gold, Carter. Straight up conspiracy. If this lands in front of a judge." "It won't just land," I said. "It'll explode." 2 days later, I filed a civil harassment and conspiracy lawsuit against the HOA and 5 of its senior members. Charges included trespassing, vandalism, property damage, defamation, and organized harassment. Channel 12 interviewed me again. "I didn't want this fight," I told them. "I just wanted peace." But when they brought war to my dock, I decided to defend my shoreline. By now, the tide had turned. Even long-time HOA supporters were abandoning ship. One couple, Helen and George, walked up to me at the Marina during our Saturday music event and handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. "Use it to keep going," Helen said. "You've given us our lake back." I almost cried. The next morning, the first extreme retaliation since the sabotage arrived. I woke to a thunderous sound, like an explosion. Ran outside in my pajamas and boots. A tree had fallen. No, had been cut, and crashed across the entrance to the Marina's main boat ramp, blocking access and narrowly missing the Water Cafe boat. Someone had taken a chainsaw to the base during the night. Fresh sawdust was still visible on the stump. I stood there, fuming, as I dialed Sheriff Nolan again. "I don't even need to ask who did it," he grumbled. "I'm sending 2 units now." But this time, he brought backup. Within the hour, 3 county investigators arrived. This was no longer just a neighborhood feud. It was criminal harassment on a county scale. Then came the moment I didn't expect. As I was giving the investigators access to security footage, I noticed a woman standing quietly near the dock gate. It was Deborah. Not in her usual iron blazer, or with her clipboard. She looked tired. Her arms crossed not in anger, but in defeat. "I didn't approve this," she said softly. I didn't respond. She looked down. "The sabotage. The propane. The tree. That wasn't me. I know who it was, and they've gone too far." I raised an eyebrow. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because they're turning on me too," she said. "They think I failed. And honestly, I don't want to be part of this anymore." I was quiet for a long time. Then I said, "You could have stopped this before it started." She nodded. "I know." And then, to my complete shock, she handed me a USB drive. "Board meeting recordings. Off the record. Use them how you want." Then she turned and walked away. I watched her go. For the first time, I didn't see an enemy. I saw someone who'd lost herself in the power and finally realized it. That night, I listened to every recording. Heard voices laughing about the Marina, mocking the community cleanup days, bragging about the idiot with the floating grill boat. I heard them name the person who cut the propane valve. I heard them joke about calling fake complaints to the sheriff's office. It was all there. Evidence. Proof. Closure. I didn't sleep much that night. But I knew one thing. This war was almost over. And I wasn't going to lose it. I didn't waste time. By dawn, I was already at Harvey's office with the USB stick in my coat pocket. We sat across from each other in his conference room as he plugged it in and opened the audio files. For the next 2 hours, we listened, word by word, name by name, as the entire plan unraveled. There was no ambiguity. On those recordings, the HOA board members openly discussed everything from the Operation Shoreline harassment plan to filing false complaints against me, down to assigning people to monitor my guests and disrupt his so-called community events. But what sealed it, what made Harvey's eyes widen like he'd struck oil, was the voice of Mike, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer, saying, "He won't see it coming. We'll cut the propane line while he's out. No one will trace it. It'll look like a rusted valve." I felt my stomach twist. It was one thing to suspect these people wanted to scare me. It was another to hear them plotting my death. Harvey sat back and blew out a low whistle. "We're not just suing anymore," he said. "This is felony-level stuff. Conspiracy, attempted property damage, reckless endangerment, Possibly even attempted manslaughter if a DA's aggressive enough. He grabbed a legal pad and started scribbling notes. I'm sending copies to the county prosecutor, the sheriff's department, and a federal mediator. These clowns don't realize how deep they've dug themselves. I watched him, quiet for a moment. Then I asked, can I hold a press conference at the Marina this weekend? He looked up. You're about to make history out here, Carter. Make sure you look good doing it. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. News of the leaked HOA recordings broke on every local news channel. Then it spread to the state outlets. The Daily Herald, WCTV, even the Morning Beat podcast featured the story. My face was suddenly everywhere. Reporters called it Lakeview's HOA scandal and the Marina mutiny. Some articles named it the war over water. But to me, it was just personal. Still, I used the moment. I set up a stage on the Marina dock and held a community press conference. Cameras lined the edge of the pier. Residents stood with posters that read, "No more HOA tyranny. We stand with Carter. Lake belongs to everyone." As I took the microphone, the sun was shining over the water like a spotlight. I never came here to fight, I began. I came here to remember my wife, to enjoy peace in the place we loved. But instead of peace, I was met with harassment, lies, and vandalism. The truth is, they didn't just try to run me off, they tried to destroy everything I was building here. I paused, letting the cameras zoom in. But what they forgot is that you don't win by tearing people down. You win by building something better. And that's what we're doing. The crowd erupted in cheers. Deborah didn't show up to the press conference. But I got a letter from her the next day. Handwritten, folded neatly, and left in my mailbox. Mr. Carter, I made a mistake. Several, actually. I let power blind me, and I allowed fear of losing control to turn me into someone I don't even recognize anymore. I stepped down from the HOA board yesterday. I've also provided everything I know to the sheriff. I'm sorry. Deborah. I reread the letter twice, then set it down. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. But it meant something. The investigation moved fast. With the recordings, the security footage, and Mike's arrest during the dock incident, the sheriff had enough to start issuing subpoenas. 3 HOA board members were served in a single day. Gregory, the smug HOA lawyer, was disbarred temporarily pending a review of his actions. Turns out, he had known about the sabotage plots. The Bar Association didn't take kindly to that. And Mike, he confessed. Faced with felony vandalism charges, he folded like wet paper. Told the sheriff everything, from Operation Shoreline's assignments to who spray-painted the boathouse, to who exactly cut the propane line. His confession lit the match. The entire HOA board, minus a few decent people, resigned by the following Monday. Meanwhile, life at the Marina bloomed like spring. The lights were restored, brighter and better than before. We added benches, picnic tables, and a kayak launch ramp. The floating cafe started serving breakfast, and June, my sweet neighbor, became its baker. I'm calling this the Sunrise Bun, she told me, handing me a warm roll with orange glaze and cinnamon. To start your mornings sweet and strong. I chuckled. You should have been a poet, June. She blushed. Only for you. The air felt lighter. The lake no longer held tension, but laughter, music, and boat horns. I caught Ellie, the little girl from the community events, teaching her younger brother to fish by the pier. This is your spot now, right? She asked me. I knelt beside her. It's all of ours. Always was. But there was one final shock. One that came in the form of a letter, certified, signed, and embossed. From the Lake County Department of Housing and Land Use. It read, following community petition #LC 47822 and unanimous vote by the Lakeview County Council, Marina Lot 7B and Cabin Parcel 1A, currently under private ownership by Mr. Carter, have been designated as a protected community space under the newly passed Public Lakefront Freedom Act. In recognition of your contribution to protecting access and rights for local residents, the marina and surrounding access points will be named in your honor. The Carter Lakeside Commons. Effective immediately. I had to sit down. June found me on the dock later and asked why I was crying. I just handed her the letter. She read it silently, then took my hand. I think Margaret would have been very proud, she whispered. I nodded, wiping my eyes. Yeah, I think so too. And just when I thought things couldn't be more surreal, Sheriff Nolan visited the cabin. Not to issue a report. Not for an investigation. But to invite me to an upcoming community award ceremony. You're getting the Lakeview Civil Impact Award, he said, shaking my hand. Never seen a private citizen fight that hard for the public good. I laughed. I was just trying to enjoy my coffee on the dock. Guess that cup changed everything, he replied. That evening, I sat once again on my dock. The lake was calm. Lights twinkled on the water. Soft music played from someone's pontoon boat in the distance. I looked at the empty chair beside me. Margaret's chair. The one I hadn't touched since she passed. I reached over, dusted it gently, then set a fresh glass of lemonade on its armrest. "Still saving your spot," I whispered. And then I leaned back, watching the moonrise, my hands behind my head, smiling. Because in the end, I didn't just fight back. I changed the lake. And it changed me too. 3 weeks passed. Peace had returned to the lake. Children laughed as they paddled along the water's edge. Retired couples played dominoes in shaded picnic corners of the newly named Carter Lakeside Commons. My floating cafe boat was now a regular weekend hub, and June's sunrise buns had become a local obsession. But even in peace, I knew better than to let my guard down. Because storms don't always start with thunder. Sometimes they creep in quietly, disguised as progress. It started with a letter. Stamped, sealed, and looking very official. To Mr. Edward Carter. From Wilson and Crane LLP. Pending zoning dispute regarding commercial use of private marina property. I frowned as I read it. They were claiming the marina was being used commercially, and therefore subject to zoning restrictions. They wanted an immediate halt to public access and a formal review by the county's zoning commission. But here's the thing. I wasn't charging anyone. Not a dime. I wasn't renting dock slips. I wasn't making profit from the cafe boat. Every donation went back into supplies and maintenance. I wasn't selling anything, and there were no formal employees. This wasn't a business. It was a community. And someone was trying to twist the rules to take that away again. I called Harvey immediately. "They're trying to file a zoning complaint," he said, flipping through the scanned letter. "Based on what? That you serve lemonade on a dock." "They're using a loophole," I replied. "Claiming public use equals commercial use." He grunted. "This smells like the work of Gregory Parkman's shadow network. That man might be disbarred, but he knows how to use puppets." "You think the HOA is behind this again?" I asked. "Not officially. But someone's got deep pockets and a long memory." I wasn't about to sit around waiting for zoning officers to slap fines on my dock. So, I took a drive to the Lake County Zoning Office. A modest building, but inside, a whole different beast, bureaucracy in its final boss form. I met with a young woman named Shelley who wore glasses too big for her face and had a nervous smile. She pulled up my file and read quietly for a moment. Then she looked up. "Mr. Carter, your property is zoned as private residential with attached water access. The marina lot, however, falls under mixed-use waterfront allocation, but there's no recorded permit for commercial redevelopment. That's where the complaint's focusing." "I didn't redevelop anything," I said. "I fixed what was broken, and the public is using it because I invited them." She nodded slowly, unsure. "I'm not running a business. I'm hosting a neighborhood," I added. She tapped her pen. "Technically, you're in the gray. They're trying to paint you as a soft operator running an unregistered recreational facility." I sat back, quiet. Then I smiled. "What if I make it officially nonprofit?" She raised her eyebrows. "I'll form a foundation," I said. "Community-owned. No profit, no fees, and a rotating board of local volunteers to maintain it. That'll satisfy the zoning board and protect the marina from future legal attacks." She smiled back. "That would work." Within the week, I formed the Carter Lake Commons Foundation. June was the first board member. Then Helen and George from Lot 15. Even Ellie's dad joined as the youth outreach coordinator. I donated the marina into the foundation's name and retained only advisory voting rights. Suddenly, this wasn't just mine anymore. It was ours. The people's. And the best part, it made the zoning complaint completely useless. Harvey delivered the legal response personally. "Tell your client to stop throwing rocks at a stone wall," he told the opposing counsel. Because now the foundation has protection under Local Statute 62.4, community-held land trusts. But the fight wasn't quite over. Because the day after the zoning complaint failed, I noticed a sleek black SUV parked at the edge of the marina. Tinted windows. No plates. It idled for nearly 20 minutes, engine humming low, until I walked toward it. Then it sped off. The next morning, I found a dead fish nailed to my dock post. Old trick, but effective. I didn't panic. I upgraded my security instead. Installed 360 degrees cameras, floodlights with motion sensors, and partnered with the sheriff's department for nightly patrols. Harvey even had a friend at the state attorney general's office open a formal review into post-HOA organized harassment. The game had changed. They weren't coming after me anymore. They were coming after what I'd built. So I focused on fortifying. That weekend, we held the first annual Carter Lakeside Festival. Over 500 people attended. We had food trucks, paddleboard races, a lakefront movie night, and live music. June made over 300 baked goods. Ellie won the kids' fishing contest. Her smile when I handed her the trophy was worth every sleepless night. As the sun set over the lake, people sat shoulder to shoulder on picnic blankets. Laughter echoed across the water. The scent of grilled corn and barbecued ribs filled the air. I stood on the main dock, mic in hand, and looked out over the glowing lanterns and boats. I didn't mean to start a revolution, I said. I just wanted to sit by the lake and remember my wife. But you all turned it into something more. I raised a glass. To community. To resistance. And to floating where we damn well please. The cheers shook the trees. Later that night, I was locking up the cafe boat when I saw headlights flash across the water again. That same black SUV. Parked now on the hilltop road above the marina. But this time, I didn't flinch. I looked straight at it. And waved. The lights flicked off. The SUV drove away. 2 days later, I received a small brown envelope with no return address. Inside was a typed note. This isn't over. You're making enemies you don't even see. Pull back now, or you'll regret it. I handed it over to Sheriff Nolan. He read it, folded it carefully, and said, "They're getting desperate." I nodded. Desperate people make mistakes. He smiled. And mistakes get people caught. So I kept building. Added new docks for disabled access. Started a youth kayak program. Offered swimming lessons on Sundays. We even started work on a community garden near the hill. Each step forward was a slap to the face of whoever still wanted me gone. But I knew something bigger was coming. The shadows were quiet again, but too quiet. A storm was brewing. One that wasn't just HOA games or scare tactics. One that might target the foundation itself. And this time, they weren't just trying to kick me off the lake. They were trying to burn the whole dock down with me on it. It happened at 2:43 a.m. A blaring siren jolted me out of sleep. Not from my security system. No, this was the Marina's emergency fire alarm. By the time I slipped into my jeans, yanked on boots, and ran out of the cabin, the night sky above the lake was glowing orange. The boathouse was on fire. Flames danced up from the roof like angry hands clawing at the stars. The wooden walls crackled. Smoke poured out across the water. Sparks rained down onto the docks. I could hear shouting, neighbors rushing down from their homes. A woman was crying. Somewhere in the distance, Ellie was yelling her dad's name. I sprinted toward the marina as the first water pump truck barreled down the road, headlights flashing. June was already there, barefoot in her robe, holding a garden hose that barely dribbled. I tried to stop it, she sobbed. It's not your fault, I said, guiding her back. The firefighters took over quickly. Hoses hissed. Ash billowed. Neighbors stood in stunned silence. It took less than 30 minutes for them to bring it under control. But the damage. The entire boathouse was gone. Just embers now. That was the heart of the marina. The original structure Margaret and I used to sit under during rainstorms. The first building I restored when I bought the place. And now it was charred bones floating in silence. Arson, Deputy Marshal said flatly, poking through the rubble after sunrise. Accelerants found in 3 locations. Fire started in the back, by the generator. Whoever did this knew exactly what to hit. He pulled something out of the ashes, a small canister, melted around the edges. We're testing it now, but I can tell you this wasn't random. I didn't need the test. I knew. This wasn't just a fire. This was war. The sheriff's department cordoned off the entire marina for the next 48 hours. Forensics teams combed the wreckage. I stayed at June's house that night. She wouldn't let me be alone, and neither of us slept. I should have stayed longer last night, she kept whispering. Maybe I could have stopped it. I placed my hand on hers. June, if you had stayed longer, you could have been in that fire. That shut her up real quick. But the worst part? The kids' kayak gear was stored in that boathouse. The paddleboards. Ellie's fishing gear. The community donations. Gone. All gone. The next morning, Channel 12 parked a news van by the road, but I refused to go on air. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I posted a quiet update to the People's Lake website. Just one image, a photo of the ashes. The caption read, "They burned it down, but they didn't break us." That post went viral. Over 1.2 million shares in 48 hours. Messages poured in from all over the country. I don't even live near you, but I'm crying. Whoever did this needs to be locked up for life. Please rebuild. Don't let them win. Donations hit $40,000 in a single day. A construction crew volunteered free labor. And then something wild happened. A tech billionaire, some guy I'd never heard of, but apparently he owned 3 electric boat companies, sent an email. Saw your story. Reminds me of my late father. Please use the attached transfer to rebuild, no strings attached. And maybe add solar charging stations next time. The transfer was for $150,000. That afternoon, I called Harvey. They crossed a line this time, I said. They've crossed several, he replied. But this one's federal. I've already got ATF involved. You'll have a special investigator by tomorrow. Do you think they'll catch them? There was a pause. I know they will. People like this always slip. They get cocky. They get greedy. Then he added, but Ed, this could take time. I don't care, I said. I'm not stopping. The very next weekend, we held a lakefront vigil. Over 600 people showed up. Some stood in silence. Some brought candles. Others brought flowers and photos of loved ones lost on this very lake. I stood on the dock, what remained of it, with a bullhorn and my heart beating in my throat. We didn't build this place out of concrete and nails, I said. We built it with memories, with kindness, with purpose. Whoever tried to burn us down doesn't understand. I paused, tears welling up. You can't burn down what lives inside people. That night, the wind carried hundreds of lanterns across the lake. Silent stars floating across the water. On Monday, Special Investigator Trina Hale arrived. Former military, sharp as a blade, and didn't waste time. I've dealt with worse, she said, standing over the ashes. But not by much. She examined everything. Talked to the fire crews. Interviewed neighbors. Pulled footage from local traffic cams, and even cell phone towers. Then she brought me into her SUV and showed me a blurry still image. Recognize this? The photo showed a figure, tall, hood up, walking toward the Marina entrance at 2:32 a.m. A glint of metal in one hand. A canister. My breath caught. It looked like Mike. I asked. He's still out. I thought he was locked up. Out on bail, she confirmed. And not under watch anymore since the original trial ended. Guess he thinks he's untouchable. I clenched my fists. He's going back in. Oh, she smiled. He won't be alone. The next week was a blur. Rebuilding began almost immediately. People volunteered every day. Teenagers hauled lumber. Moms made lemonade. Veterans cut beams and laid foundation. We renamed the new boathouse Phoenix Landing. It rose quickly, faster than the first one, bigger too. 2 levels. Reinforced steel frame. Solar panels. Hidden sprinklers. And right by the door, a plaque. In memory of what they tried to take, and what we chose to give back. Then came the day we'd all been waiting for. Trina called me just before dawn. We got M, she said. The ATF raided Mike's property. Found accelerants, fire-starting materials, and even plans, drawings of the Marina, maps, notations. Turns out, he didn't act alone. 2 other former HOA board members had funded him. They were trying to create chaos to buy back the Marina at a discount. It was a con. Burn it down, file claims, and then purchase what was left through a shell company after I'd be forced to walk away. They were arrested. All 3. Charged with felony arson, conspiracy to defraud, attempted insurance fraud, and destruction of protected community property. Mike? They added attempted manslaughter to his list. When I stood in front of the Marina crowd to announce the arrests, people cried. Grown men. Women who'd been afraid to speak out before. A group of teenagers clapped so hard their hands turned red. I looked out over them and said, "You didn't just help me rebuild a dock. You helped build something bigger. A place no one will ever take from us again." Later that night, as I sat alone under the stars, I could have sworn I heard Margaret's wind chimes gently ringing. I smiled. "Still with me," I whispered. "Always." The Marina was whole again. The new boathouse, Phoenix Landing, stood tall, glowing under rows of solar lights that lined the newly laid docks. Laughter and chatter echoed across the lake once more. Kayaks glided on calm waters. Children fished off the edge, snacks in hand. The floating cafe now bore a new sign above its hatch door. Still floating. But even in peace, the past cast long shadows. I was reminded of that the moment I received the thick, white envelope in my mailbox. Legal paper. Heavy stock. A name I hadn't seen in months, Gregory Parkman. Disbarred, disgraced, but not defeated. Inside was a formal notice of intent to reclaim governance rights over Marina Lot 7B and Parcel 1A. The name of the claimant? Lakeview Shores Association, Temporary Reorganization Committee. I couldn't believe it. After everything, after the arrests, the scandal, the community revolt, and the fire, they were trying to come back. This wasn't the old HOA. This was a new group, led by some of the leftover board members who had escaped charges, and now cloaked their return under a new title, claiming that my foundation's community-based management of the lake was irregular and without full municipal approval. They wanted a county hearing to review whether my foundation's stewardship was legal. Harvey called me before I could even finish the letter. "I read it," he said. "They're throwing a Hail Mary. They can't attack you personally anymore, so now they're trying to unravel the foundation." "Can they?" "No, but they can waste your time. Tie us up in hearings. Smear you again in local press. And if they're backed by a few wealthy residents still loyal to the old regime." I sighed, my chest tight. "Then we fight again," I said. "Yeah," Harvey replied, his voice steady. "But this time, let's finish it." I called an emergency meeting of the Carter Lake Commons Foundation Board. We met at Phoenix Landing, right on the upper deck, overlooking the water. June brought lemon pound cake. Ellie sat in the back with a drawing pad and a Capri Sun. George, Helen, and the rest of the board listened as I explained what was coming. They want us out, I said. Again. This time through the courts. George slammed his fist down. We voted for this place. The people chose it. Are we supposed to let some fake board with new stationery tell us we can't enjoy our own lake? We're not stepping down, June said, voice firm. Not after what they did. Not after what they tried to burn. Everyone nodded. So we made a plan. The next 2 weeks were brutal. The new reorganization committee filed motion after motion. Harvey filed responses, objections, and procedural counterchallenges. Meanwhile, the local newspaper, now owned by one of the committee's key members, began printing articles with headlines like, "Was the Carter Marina takeover legal? Homeowners concerned over unchecked dock expansion. Floating cafe raises zoning questions." It was all smoke and mirrors. But smoke has a way of choking people, especially when it spreads fast. Some neighbors began to doubt again. "I thought it was all over," one woman whispered to me in the market. Another man said, "Look, I love what you did, but I can't afford another HOA war. I've got kids, Ed." The lake community started to fray at the edges. The unity we'd built after the fire was unraveling. And then came the final blow. The county zoning board sent a letter. Due to recent filings and community concern, a public hearing has been scheduled to determine the governance and stewardship validity of Marina Lot 7B and Parcel 1A. All stakeholders are encouraged to attend. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning, 10 a.m. In 3 days. That night, I didn't sleep. I stood on my dock under a full moon, the lake like a mirror around me. I thought of Margaret, of the first time we came here, the way she'd laugh when I burned her marshmallows, the way we slow danced barefoot on this very dock. I thought of June, of Ellie and her little brother, of George's back pain and Helen's pie recipes, of Mike in handcuffs, of Gregory's snake smile, of smoke and fire and wind chimes. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight this one quietly. The next morning, I sent out an email blast to over 10,000 people. Subject line: "They're trying to take our lake again." I attached all legal documents, all previous rulings affirming the foundation's legality, a timeline of events since the beginning, photos of the fire, a map showing the HOA's limited boundary versus the Marina's free title, and a request: show up. Stand with us. Speak if you can. This time, they're not just fighting me, they're fighting us all. Friday arrived. I wore my best brown coat, the one Margaret bought me the year she got sick. June fixed my tie even though I wasn't wearing one. Muscle memory, she joked. I arrived at the county hall at 9:30. I expected maybe a few dozen people. What I saw made me stop cold. The courthouse steps were covered in people. Hundreds. Kids holding handmade signs. "Let Carter keep the lake. Stop the lake thieves." Still floating. Even Ellie's drawing of Phoenix Landing was on a giant banner hanging from the railing. Inside, the courtroom filled so fast they had to open 2 overflow rooms. The press showed up. So did news stations. Bloggers. TikTokers. People who didn't even live in Lakeview Shores, but had followed the story for months. The rebranded HOA Reorganization Committee looked stunned. Gregory sat beside their new attorney, pale-faced, flipping through folders like they might save him. They wouldn't. Because this time, the whole lake showed up. One by one, community members stood to speak. George, hands shaking, said, "That dock is where I found peace after my cancer treatment." Helen added, "The marina is more than property. It's people. It's hope. It's ours." A teenage boy said, "I was depressed until I joined the youth kayak club. I don't care about zoning laws. I care about having somewhere safe to be." Then Ellie stood. Everyone quieted. She wore a blue jean jacket with glitter buttons and clutched a folded piece of paper. "My name is Ellie," she began. "I'm 9. I like to fish. Mr. Carter taught me how. I didn't have any friends before the lake events. Now I have 4. I don't want to lose them." Then she looked straight at the panel. "Please don't take away my lake." When my turn came, I didn't bring a speech. I just stood there and told the truth. I'm not perfect. I didn't expect any of this. But I know this. I built something that brought people together. I did it because I love this place. I love what it gave me, and I just wanted to give something back. I paused, let the silence sit. If there's a law against that, then maybe the law needs to be rewritten. The panel took a recess. People waited outside, pacing, praying, whispering. It took almost an hour. Then they returned. The chairwoman, a tall woman with graying hair and reading glasses, cleared her throat. After reviewing all filings, community testimony, and prior legal rulings, she looked up. "We find that the Carter Lake Commons Foundation has operated within all legal rights, zoning limitations, and ethical responsibilities." A pause. "We therefore deny the Reorganization Committee's claim and affirm the Foundation's stewardship. Effective immediately, the marina and related properties are declared permanent protected community space." Cheers erupted. Ellie hugged me so tight my back popped. June kissed my cheek. Gregory? He just stood there, silent, holding a folder that suddenly looked very, very light. That night, I sat back on my dock once again. The lake was quiet. Still. Mine. Ours. Forever. It was over. This time, truly over. No more lawsuits. No more shady complaints. No more fires, sabotage, or phony boards pretending to speak for a community they never cared about. The lake was finally free. Phoenix Landing stood strong, wrapped in fresh cedar, trimmed in navy blue with the golden plaque glinting near the entrance. Families laughed on the docks, kids ran barefoot with dripping snow cones, and the lake, our lake, reflected nothing but peace. But peace doesn't mean stillness. And I wasn't done yet. Because if there's one thing I've learned through this entire war, it's that community doesn't survive by accident. It thrives through intent. So I decided to make one final move. Not for revenge. Not for recognition. But for legacy. A month after the county ruling, I gathered the board for one last meeting. On the upper deck of Phoenix Landing, with sweet tea and June's cinnamon rolls on the table. I'm stepping down, I said, cutting straight to the point. They froze. George looked up over his glasses. Ed, you sure? Helen frowned. You built this. I nodded slowly. Exactly. And I need to make sure it survives without me. If this foundation is going to last generations, it has to grow beyond one man. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay on as an advisor. But someone younger, someone with a vision for the future, needs to lead it. Ellie's dad, Jason, cleared his throat. I think I know who you're thinking about. I smiled. Let's hear it. 2 weeks later, we hosted the largest lake event yet. The first annual Carter Lakeside Legacy Festival. Boats from all over the state pulled up to our newly expanded floating docks. Bands played from floating stages. The air smelled like grilled corn, barbecue ribs, and warm peach cobbler. Kids painted wooden fish ornaments, and older folks danced barefoot in the grass under twinkling lights. I stood on the main dock at sunset, microphone in hand, for one final speech. This lake gave me more than I ever expected, I began. But what matters most is what you all gave back to it. You didn't just rebuild a marina. You restored a spirit. I paused as June squeezed my hand. And now, I continued, it's time I pass the torch to someone who represents the future of this place. I turned. Ellie, come on up here. She walked shyly toward me, wearing a denim jacket covered in patches, with one hand behind her back. She's not going to run things just yet, I chuckled. But she is going to announce who will. Ellie pulled out a folded paper. My dad, she said, reading carefully. He's smart. He loves the lake. He loves people. He has good ideas and he listens. And also, he makes the best pancakes on Sunday. The crowd laughed. Jason blushed, then stepped forward, accepting the community's vote as the new president of the Carter Lake Commons Foundation. Let's keep building, he said into the mic. Let's make sure this lake stays for everyone. Forever. Thunderous applause. I watched from the dock as fireworks exploded over the lake that night. Red, blue, gold, reflected like falling stars on the water. I felt Margaret's presence again, not just in memory, but in every laugh, every light, every boat horn echoing across the surface. The wind chimes outside the cabin rang gently, as if in agreement. 3 days later, I sat in my favorite chair by the window of my lakeside cabin. A fishing rod leaned against the doorframe, untouched, because these days I found more joy in watching than catching. A knock at the door. I opened it to find June, holding a pie dish and a photo album. Thought we'd look through the old days, she smiled. We sat by the fire, turning pages. Margaret's smile in one photo. The original dock in another. A young me, shirtless and sunburnt, pretending to row with a shovel. We laughed until we cried. And then we just sat. Quiet. Comfortable. At peace. The next morning, I took one last stroll through the marina. Phoenix Landing. The cafe boat. The benches. The garden near the hill, now renamed Margaret's Garden, complete with wildflowers and a small plaque. And then I climbed into my old wooden boat. The one that started all of this. The one I floated in that first day when the HOA called the cops on me. I drifted gently out to the center of the lake, just as the sun rose over the pines. No noise. No enemies. Just the quiet hum of peace. I closed my eyes and whispered, you didn't just survive, old man. You built something. So if you're ever near Lakeview Shores, and you see an old wooden boat drifting across the morning mist, know that a battle was fought there, not just against a broken system, but for kindness, fairness, and the right to belong. And know that the people won. Because no matter what, we still float. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or state in the comments. Let us know if you stood with Carter all the way to the end. And if this story moved you, share it. Because someone else out there might need to know. They're not alone. Their lake can still be saved. And they too can float.